What's going on, everybody? It's your boy Shuggy from Shook Earth Media, and today we're talking again about Walking Dead Deluxe. I recently did a video about how I think that these is the superior version of the Walking Dead comic series. It colorizes it and changes it from black and white to color, and I think while I was skeptical at first about the transition, I'm now full convert, and I fully think that this is the best way to read the book, so I highly recommend it to anyone who was a fan. Now, I also want to talk about the cutting room floor at the end of the book. At the end of each of these books, Robert Kirkman, the writer, he goes through his outline. He has a handwritten outline that he made at the time that goes page by page of what the plot line was. And this is actually one of the most valuable parts of the reprints for me. As somebody who's currently working on a comic series, it's been really great to see the behind-the-scenes process. I'm always a big fan of like audio commentaries on DVDs and Blu-rays and behind-the-scenes featurettes. As somebody who's a creative person and artist, it's really valuable to see how these things came to be and to see the decision-making process behind the scenes. It's very valuable. It's better than any film school writing class you can get, honestly, is to look at these behind-the-scenes things. And it's been really valuable in this series in particular. Seeing, for example, in issue 6, he talks about how his original plan at that point, or one of his ideas, was to kill Rick in issue 6 instead of Shane. Have Shane kill Rick and have Carl observe that happening and have him have this terrible secret. He knows what Shane really did, killing Rick, but he has to keep this secret for fear of his own life. And how that could, all these different storylines he had. He has stories about how he owns every page of original art for issue 17 and why he picked that issue over others and how he was in debt at the time and all these very interesting stories, how characters almost died when they could have lived, and talking about how he didn't come up with the word walkers. It was Frank Darabont calling them walkers, and in the comic originally he had roamers and lurkers, and you get to see a behind the scenes look at a lot of his thought process behind creating the book, and that's extremely valuable as a fan and as a creative person. But I wanted to talk today about how he's consistently almost apologizing for his past work. And of course, as an artist, a creative person, I can understand looking at past work and being critical of it. But as a fan, that's not necessarily what I want to see in a behind-the-scenes thing, because as somebody who is very possessive over the things that I like, I mean, as a nerd, you get to be very obsessive about certain things, you really like certain things, and you could be critical of it, but to hear the creative person behind it being critical of it, it almost feels like a personal attack in a way. It's like whenever he's criticizing his own work, it's like he's criticizing me for liking it, you know? I know that's not how it's meant, but that's how it can come off to the audience, so I would like to see less of the criticism of his past work. Now, when he says, I wish I did this instead, like he talked about how he wished he elaborated on the Shane and Rick and Lori love triangle and how he wished that he expanded that out a bit more. That's good to see, because that leads to how the show came to be and all that. But just criticizing individual lines and stuff like that, I feel like I would rather hear other things. But, you know, of course it's his prerogative. This is his project. You know, he has the right to do whatever he wants. But I just wanted to come on today and say that I'm not a fan of this apologizing for the past, especially because I don't think that most of these things are very warranted. So we'll start with issue 24. And this is a very pivotal issue in the series. It involves Rick's epic "We Are the Walking Dead" speech. This is when he comes to the realization that the living ones are the Walking Dead, and it's a very it's the emotional crux of the book in a way, and it's the most important monologue in the whole series. It sets the tone for the book going forward, so it's a very important issue. And now in this issue, there is a moment where Rick was knocked out after he had a fight with Tyrese. Rick kind of snapped, went a little crazy, and after seeing the fight between them, the group decides that Rick shouldn't be the only leader. He shouldn't be the one making all the decisions. And they decide to create a council. And there are 4 people on the council. You got Rick, Dale, you got Tyrese, and one more person I'm forgetting. But it's 4 men on the council. And Rick, when he hears this, he says, "No women, really?" And Dale explains that Patricia made the same point, but Lori wasn't interested in being on the council, despite Patricia trying to get her on the council. And Lori's pregnant at this time. She has a lot more things to focus on, and she didn't want to end up being on the council. And Dale, in the dialogue, he talks about how Glenn didn't want to be on the council either, and he says that, "I think they just want to be protected." Now, in the cutting room floor at the back of the issue, we have Kirkman saying that he views this as a misogynistic and dismissive line, and I just completely, fully disagree with that. He explains how, character-wise, each of the women in the issue up to this point, how they wouldn't be interested in being on the council. And the truth of the matter is that men, women, people of all kinds, most people are not built to be leaders. Most people want to be protected. That's why we have a government. That's why we have a military. That's why we have a fire department. That's why we have police officers and ambulance. People want to feel safe, and that's just how we structure our society, to make people feel as safe as possible. And in this world where everything is dangerous, I mean, we live in a dangerous world today, but it's nothing in comparison to this post-apocalyptic world that these people are living in. And it would only make sense that most people want to be protected. Most people, they might have opinions on things, but they don't want to be the ones shouldering all the responsibility. Most people are much more comfortable criticizing other people than they are actually taking on responsibility for themselves. So it only tracks to me that most people would not want to be on the council, and that just makes logical sense to me. I don't think it's a misogynistic thing at all. I mean, he even talks about, like, he's his own defense lawyer. He's talking about how Lori's pregnant. Maggie's not really in an emotional state to take on leadership at this point. That obviously changes over time. She becomes the president at the end, right? So that changes. But Michonne is new to the group, so it wouldn't make sense for her to be making leadership decisions. For Patricia just betrayed the whole group to people that wanted to kick them out of the prison. So it only tracks that none of the women at this point in the series would want to be on the council. And to say it's sexist, I think is completely asinine. He says that, well, Dale's an old white guy, so it totally makes sense. Saying that Dale's a misogynist, that doesn't track for me either. I think it's asinine. I disagree with it completely. I think it's just an excuse. And the fact of the matter is that these apologetics, you're apologizing to people that aren't reading the book. They wouldn't accept your apology anyways. They wouldn't even read the apology. They would read the part that offended them, and then they would spurg out, and that would be it, right? These aren't people that can be appeased with logic. So writing any of this, it's just not helpful at all. It does feel like you're calling the audience misogynistic for liking it, and I don't think that there's anything wrong with this storyline at all. So that's just how I feel about this particular issue. So going to the next issue, this is issue 22. This is the issue that leads into the fight between Rick and Tyrese. And there's a love triangle going on where Tyrese was dating Carol, and they were hooking up and spending time together, but then Tyrese hooks up with Michonne, and she catches them in the act, and it's a whole love triangle situation, and these two end up breaking up, and then Carol's really broken up about it, and at the end of this issue, she attempts suicide. She slits her wrists. She ends up being okay, but it kind of sparks the whole fight because Rick is rightfully very upset that Tyrese would do something like that, and in this desperate world that we're in, that he would betray somebody like that. So it leads into the whole fight, and at the end of the issue in the cutting room floor section, We have Robert Kirkman saying that male writers are using female tragedy to forward males' storylines, and I think that's, again, very silly apologetics. I disagree with it completely. I don't think there's anything wrong with the storyline as it is, because her attempting suicide, it forwards her own storyline as well, Carol, that is. It forwards her storyline. She ends up actually committing suicide at the end, and I mean, it's important to show misery at this point in the book, and to have these kind of soap opera drama-y storylines. It's very important to the book as a whole. I mean, that's the whole point of the book, is what the apocalypse does to people. And, of course, relationships and romance and love and stuff like that, it's very central to our lives now, today, and it would be even more so in an apocalyptic setting where there's not a whole lot to really live for other than survival itself. So it gives people hope, it gives people something to look forward to, and it would only make sense that Carol would have trouble picturing a future without this relationship. So, and seeing him say that, oh, female characters, their tragedy forwarding male storylines, as if that there's something wrong with that, I immediately thought of, I think it's episode 1 or 2 of Downton Abbey, one of my favorite shows. But in one of the first episodes, you have Lady Mary hooking up with this guy named Mr. Pamuk, and he actually has a heart attack or an aneurysm and dies while they're having sex. And it's a very scandalous thing, because back in those times, it takes place at the end of the 19th century at this point, and that kind of hooking up premarital sex was very taboo back then. So it was a very scandalous thing, and his death, his tragedy, was used to forward Lady Mary's storylines. I mean, there was a whole blackmail storyline. She was about to get married to a guy who ran a newspaper, and he was using the fact that he knows the truth about Mr. Pamuk in that situation to kind of blackmail her into trying to keep the marriage going, even though she didn't want to at that point. So Mr. Pamuk's tragedy, his death, was used to forward a female character's storyline, and there's nothing wrong with that. That's not sexist against men, okay? That's just how the story worked out, and there's nothing wrong with it, and I think apologizing for it is silly for the reasons I already stated. Moving on to the next issue. In this issue right here, there is a part where Otis, the character, he uses a racial slur. He reveals himself to be a racist, and that's because his wife sided with some people who wanted to kick the group out of the prison, and he calls them a racial slur because he's a racist, and that's just the fact of his character. And he mentions it at the top of the cutting room floor thing, as if it's there's something wrong with that, or that he needs to address that right away, when the fact of the matter is, this is an intelligent audience reading this book. We are fans of the book already. We clearly, if you're a racist, you're not going to like this book, because, I mean, my favorite characters, Tyrese, Michonne, obviously, these are fan favorite characters, so if somebody has an issue with people that don't look like them, they're not going to like this book already. So acting like we need to be told that, saying the N-word is bad, we know that already. We don't need to be told that it's important to see racism because we need to be reminded that people like this really exist. We're an intelligent audience. We know that people like this exist. We don't need to be reminded of that. And again, I would have preferred to see other things in this behind-the-scenes stuff. This, I don't look at issue 20 and be like, oh, that's the N-word issue. No. There's plot happening, there's things happening. It's, if anything, that's like a B or C storyline, and it is important to the book, but it's not like the first thing I think of when I think of issue 20. So I think it's kind of odd that that's what he jumped on. And then we got issue 16 here. Now, in the cutting room floor at the top of this one, I think this one's a joke, so maybe I shouldn't be saying that he's apologizing here, but he said, this is the issue where we find out who the serial killer is in the prison, and it turns out it's the guy who said he was in for tax evasion, and he chops off women's heads and stuff, and he's like a middle-aged white guy, wears glasses, looks nerdy, weird and awkward, and at the top of the cutting room floor he says, "Nice commentary on race from a young Robert Kirkman here. It's always the white guy, the nerdy white guy." And like, I get that that's a joke, but to me, you made him that way not as a commentary on race. There was no racial commentary going on in that plot line. It was about picking the character that seemed the least likely at first based on first impression, so we can surprise the audience. That was why his character was designed that way. It had nothing to do with race at all. And replacing one stereotype with another, saying it's always the white nerdy guy that you should suspect or something like that, it's I don't view that as an improvement. It's just replacing one racial stereotype with another, and we should be trying to get past racial stereotypes in general. So I get that it's a joke, it's supposed to be funny, but it just rubbed me the wrong way. And then we got issue 3 here, and in this issue there's a portion where the women are doing laundry and the men are hunting, and yeah, it's a little stereotypical, but Lori says in the issue that it's not about what the men and women are doing, it's about what needs to be done, and that's just what needs to be done at that particular point. So I agree with Lori in this issue, but he's writing about it at the end as if it's something to apologize for, and again, I don't really see an issue with it. I mean, the fact is that most women are not very familiar with hunting. Of course, there are many women who do, and women are perfectly capable of hunting, but keep in mind this is early into the apocalypse, and women are not as, in general, interested in hunting and shooting guns and stuff like that. It's something that it's a skill that they need to learn and be acquired at this point in the apocalypse. We're early days still, where they still think they're going to be rescued and stuff. So keep in mind that it's a process, and this whole comic is about people adjusting to this new world. So to have it as if the women would all be like amazing fighters right at the beginning is a little silly to me. And to say this book is misogynistic, I think is very silly as well. Because, I mean, we got Michonne, Andrea, some of the greatest, some of my favorite female characters in comics. And, Michonne's very strong fighter. She introduced saving a male character right off the bat. She saves Otis right off the bat. So, I think it's a little silly to say that, this book is misogynistic in any way. And I think suggesting that in the writer suggesting that of his own work in the cutting room floor, it comes off as saying that there's something wrong with the audience liking the book as it is. So again, I'm not into this apologetics, and these people, they're not reading the book anyway. The people that would be offended by this, they're not reading the book, and your apology wouldn't do anything to dissuade them. If anything, the fact that you admitted wrongdoing would actually embolden them even more. So I don't think that it's worth spending your time on. And the things you apologize for, I don't have any issue with them as they are. So that's just my feeling on it, guys. Yeah, and if Robert Kirkman's listening, I'm just trying to say that, I get being critical of your past work, but there's no need to try to appease people that aren't reading your book anyway. And there's you can change how you do things going forward, that's fine, but to act like there's something wrong with what you did in the past, and make sure this is a book you should be proud of. It's an incredible series, incredibly successful, very popular. Men and women alike love this book. I think if you told the women that love this book that it's somehow sexist, I think they would strongly disagree, and I think you should focus on your fans and not what a bunch of lunatics on Twitter would say. So that's just my opinion, guys. And these oversensitive people, I mean, honestly, they come from a place of privilege where the wrongdoings of writing in media is all that they focus on instead of real world issues. So I don't view it as a good use of your time to apologize to them. That's just my opinion, and I'm a big fan of this book. Look forward to supporting the Walking Dead Deluxe. I can't wait to have a full run of this series. I can't wait to have a box full of all of the books in color. I'm a big fan of it. And if you are listening, I do have a pitch for a Walking Dead sequel series. I would love to pitch to you. So hit me up, shookearthmedia@gmail.com if you're interested. But anyways, I hope you guys enjoyed this video. And let me know if you guys want to see more coverage of the cutting room floor stuff. We could do videos breaking down each and all the issues of all the information we learned based on these plot breakdowns. So it's been great reading them. And as a creative person, I like to see the before and after and learn behind the scenes stuff and what plot lines could have been. And yeah, it's all great. So I'm really enjoying it. So I'm not criticizing the fact that the cutting room floor exists. I'm just saying, you know, don't waste your time trying to apologize for stuff that isn't wrong in the first place. Okay, but that's just my opinion, guys. And I hope to see you on the next video. Leave a like if you like it, sub if you want to see more videos like this, and leave a comment down below. Would love to discuss this topic with you guys. And I hope to see you on the next video. Peace out, everybody.